Well, Bruce Broussard, welcome to the HP Garage, where it's great that I'm interviewing you, the interim CEO of HP here in the HP Garage in Palo Alto. Thank you for coming today. We're doing a series of interviews tied to Forbes' list of our 250 greatest innovators. And this is so wonderful to be able to be here in kind of the start of innovation in Silicon Valley in many ways here in the garage where Mr. Hewlett and Mr. Packard got their start. So I want to talk to you a little bit about innovation. But first, let's hear a little bit about you. You've been the CEO, the interim CEO of HP just since February this year, but you've been on the board for longer than that. Talk a little bit about your career before becoming the CEO of HP.
Yeah, well, thanks. And it's great being here. I find this to be both a symbolism of the Silicon Valley, the HP Garage, and at the same time, I think looking back at the history of great innovation is really, really great. So thanks for doing that. In regards to my career, I've been a public CEO for 20 years. I've been on the HP board for 4. I stepped down as the CEO of Humana Corporation, and after running that for 12 years, and then I ran a large oncology company that treated about 18% of the cancer patients. That was public for 10 years. And so I've been a public CEO for quite some time, and prior to that, I was a public CFO. And so I've been around the public markets for a considerable amount of time. I've done 130 some earnings calls.
Oh, my goodness.
So I've seen good and bad. But really, I was attracted to HP when they asked me to sit on the board for both of their history and the legacy there. But really, they are at the center of a lot of change that's going on, and the ability to be part of that is exciting. Enrique, the previous CEO, stepped down in the end of January, and the board asked me to be able to fill his shoes, and I really have been it's just carried my appreciation for the company to a higher level, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But this garage is a statement of that pride.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about the garage. So this garage was where HP was founded. It was called Hewlett Packard at the time, and they were living in the house over here, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
quite industrial individuals. One lived inside the house, another one lived in the gardener's
which
house.
I just went in there, and it's just like this, no insulation. And Palo Alto is lovely and warm right now in May, but in January it might have been pretty cold overnight.
You'd have to get a few blankets in there.
Yeah.
But they were committed to the innovation. They were committed to, at the time, obviously it was in radio, and committed to it. And I just think the garage symbolizes their persistency, their desire to innovate, but it really starts from the purpose, I think, of what they set out to do. And they looked at innovation and technology as a way to improve people's life, both in creating new jobs, but at the same time creating a better life for individuals as the technology improves it. And obviously over the years we've seen that. But the garage itself is where all the work was done.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an example of this here, and you go through the house and you see examples, but it was founded here, and they lived here for a few years until they were able to then, afford the ability to move out of the garage and create the company.
And I also love the fact that there have been other big companies, including Google, right, that started in garages, Apple and garage. Like the fact that this is a kind of a Silicon Valley way of being, of getting started, because you didn't have the money to have an office to have a startup. But if you can use some space in a garage, this is where you can get stuff done.
That's exactly right. And I think it highlights, I think, what it takes to be an innovator. It really is the passion that really drives them. It's not the environment. It's really, I am determined to figure this out. And I think Bill and Dave were a wonderful example of that passion.
You hear that from talking to venture capitalists, that they're trying to find people who are kind of slightly crazy. You know, they're so passionate about what they're doing, they maybe can't I don't know, make their bed or get their laundry done because they're so focused on getting their invention, their idea going. You know, different from your normal average everyday people.
And I think their passion it overrides their motivation for money. It's their motivation of being able to, I'm going to develop this and I'm going to, be able to sell it for $1 zillion kind of thing. It was really around, I want to improve people's life. And that purpose I just find is such an important part of innovation.
And sometimes it's just, I just talked with Paul Makapetris, who came up with the domain naming system for the internet, who made no money on it because he was at an institute at USC that was funded by the government, and he didn't make a dime off that part of it. But I think that the other part of innovation is just solving problems, right? Solving a problem. The internet was like, how do we figure out who we connect? How do we connect these computers at different universities, and how do we keep them straight? So it's, yes, I agree that there's, how do we make people's lives better? But sometimes it's like, this doesn't make any sense. We can do this better, right? This, and sometimes it's, some people see those ideas, they have an idea that no one else sees, right? And that's why we love innovators, because they can come up with a new way to make a cancer drug, or a new way to make computers work faster, or an iPhone, right? And change everyone's lives that way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So the interesting thing about HP and this garage is HP then bought this house, right? So can you talk a little bit about what happened between the time that HP was born in this garage and today?
So 1938 is when is when the story started. In 2000, they bought the garage. And
HP bought the garage. And HP was founded in
1938.
Yes.
So we've been around for 80 years. And the reasoning for it is they wanted to establish the history here. But the house had changed over the years, as you can imagine. And they bought it in a fairly dilapidated way. It was I would say, the walls were falling down.
It was not in good repair when they bought it. Wow.
So they had to, and the house itself, the rooms of the house had been moved around over the years and so on. In fact, if you walk in, actually where the dining table is today was a bedroom.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so there's been a lot of fabrication back to the original aspect of it, but to try to maintain the core of what it was about a partnership, two people having a passion, working with minimal means to be able to make something happen, and that's really what it's established here, and then to honor that, and because HP was the early founding of the Silicon Valley, and if you travel through this Silicon Valley today, you will find roads that were created by HP. If you look at Apple and the founders of Apple worked at HP. Steve Jobs, called the partners and said, do you have a part from the particular device that he was making? And he was 12 years old at the time, and they offered him a job, and so he worked as an intern there. And so you see these attributes. Even today, the Apple campus is an old HP campus.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The property there
used to belong to HP. Oh, I had no idea.
The Rivian campus today is an old HP campus. So you just see these seeds that have been planted over the years, but it all started here, and really the company wanted to preserve that as they saw the uprising of the Silicon Valley.
And, if people watching this video might think, oh, we're in this huge garage. We're actually in a very small, very spare garage with. I mean, I love that they've got these ancient things in here,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is not luxurious. So
No,
this is not like fancy digs here in
no,
Palo
no,
Alto.
not at
People may
all.
think Palo Alto big mansions.
Yeah, no,
This is not it.
this is the basics.
Yeah, I mean
Yes.
it's lovely, but
Yeah,
it's small. It's
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
small. Yeah. How do you see innovation moving? I mean, one of the themes that we're exploring with these talks with people is looking at how the American system has enabled innovators to thrive in the past 250 years.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could maybe reflect on that, on what's worked so far for innovation, and then maybe we can talk about what innovation is going to look like going forward, what the United States needs to do to maintain this wonderful pioneer of innovation.
That's a great question. One of the things that we don't, I think, define as innovation is our Constitution. And I really think when you look at just go back in history, that Constitution has created a system that enables the innovation. Mm-hmm. And to me, without having that, we wouldn't be where it is. And we can look across the world and in other countries, and they didn't have that. They didn't have what is established today as our freedoms, the ability to have protection, to have common law that is dependable, which includes property rights, patents, all the things that go on there, to have the educational system that we have, and then in addition to have the capitalistic environment that rewards for risk.
Yeah.
Both the individuals that have the capital to invest, but also the individuals that are putting their sweat equity into it. And I find that foundation as being such an important part of our innovation as a country. And as we reflect back over the last 250 years, I find that to be an important part of it. I think also on the innovation side, you see the building of technology. And I think about over our years, we've seen, in this century or in the last century, we see the movement from industrial to machines. Mm-hmm. We see our information being organized as a result of digital. We see the access of information to be the opportunity through our mobile. And now we see AI having the ability to take the human brain and to be able to expand it so much greater. And so to me, I look at where we've been as examples of how innovation has been built on.
Yeah.
It hasn't been we stop and we start something else. It builds over time. But most importantly, I also think innovation takes time for people to adjust to it in our lives. I mean, if you think about the development of electricity, it took a number of years all the way to find out all the different ways to use electricity. And then it took a number of years to get it distributed from the metropolitan areas to the rural areas. And then you think about how that then combined with combustible engines that allowed us to deliver food in a refrigerated truck and all the things that have gone on. So I think this innovation, we talk about, well, they founded this particular device, but that device is part of a bigger system. Both our system that our founding fathers had on, but the innovation before that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think I agree with you that it is kind of a continuum, and it's interesting to hear innovators talk about how other innovations have come on top of their own innovations, which is of course is it. I mean, one of the things that I think about too is the role that our federal government has had in terms of funding research, right? Yes. And I feel like that's another thing through the National Science Foundation, through the, Defense Advanced Research Association, DARPA, through funding research at grants through that universities get. I mean, some of that is a little bit under attack now, or maybe a lot, depending on where you sit. Yeah. I wonder how important you think that is for innovation going forward. Yeah. Has private capital moved in to take over where government investment was playing a bigger role in the past?
I do think it's a dilemma we face today. I don't want to look over that. I feel the one thing that the federal government does is they are allowed to take probably more risk than the private sector is willing to do. I mean, I think about the GPS and the founding of the GPS and how that has then been able to really change our lives.
You mean with the GPS system
That's
that helps us
that's
navigate where we want to go?
exactly. But that
Right.
was years and years ago, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really came out of the military aspect of that, and it took a lot of research to do that. Even the internet. I mean, that was in the '60s, and we really didn't get it to any kind of scale until the mid '90s kind of thing. So I think this risk tolerance that the government has, because they have the ability to think longer, and in addition, they're able to look at it in a way that also is trying to advance our country, whether it's the military side or our science side. So I do think the country needs to continue to fund that and to be able to do that in the appropriate way. I think where and how it's funded probably is some debate, and not so much that when I say the how, I'm not talking about federal dollars. I'm more talking about how is it sort of allocated in our country. And I think there's been some attribution to the fact that it is more of now a matching system, and the dollars you spend, you get, and is it being used the most efficiently? And so I do think we need to continue to think about how we allocate the dollars. But I think the dollars themselves is an important part of our history. And it's an important part of our future.
And I also think the efficiency question is interesting too, because sometimes you don't know where basic research is going to lead you.
Right.
And sometimes you don't know if something that you discover, and maybe you discover something along the way that you didn't think you were going to get that, Viagra didn't start out being, a drug for, erectile dysfunction. I mean, the unintended consequences of research, right? So that's something that I feel like you don't want to crimp on research dollars if you can.
And I think the efficiency and more not how research or how ultimately innovation is, because there is a stumbling effect. You gotta stumble over one thing to get to another thing. I think more I'm talking about areas of importance. And where are we as an organization, as a country, needing innovation and allocating it with the priorities around how we look at the areas, as opposed to just, making it really efficient, and we're only going to have the risk tolerance that would be the private sector.
Or where private capital wants to go, right? Which maybe right now it seems like all AI, right? It's AI and almost nothing else, or maybe some healthcare stuff too, or maybe AI and healthcare. But there. Meanwhile, we've got a whole big country with people with all kinds of needs,
I think building on that, I do think the ability to incentivize the private sector is another area. And you see this in China today, where they are really helping bring the automated car to scale. But they're doing that through the private sector, their definition of private sector, and the government. And I do think there are areas where the government can say, well, let's use the motivation of the capital side to help create innovation. And they do that today. But I think there's opportunities probably to partner more with the private sector and encourage the direction of of where we think innovation is most important.
Yeah, sometimes there's been criticism. I think about that company Solyndra that got a lot of money from the government that failed. The government then faces criticism sometimes when it puts a bunch of lends a bunch of money to a private sector company because of course not all of them are going to succeed. And so the government doesn't know that either, right? Nobody knows exactly what's going to succeed. So it's kind of a two-edged sword, right? We want the support, and you may pick an area, but you might pick the wrong area.
Well, one of the things I'm hopeful of the series, especially where we are in the milestone of our country of being 250 years, and is that we will see that life is a journey, and that a particular failure, like you're talking about, isn't what we should judge. Over time, we should judge how we're progressing. And I look back the 250 years and look at where our country is. There's been some tough times in our country. Not every day that we woke up and it was shiny and now clouds are out. There was a lot of clouds during many, many different times. And the American people persevered through that and made the country better. And we should reflect on that as we think about where we need to go, and the ability to say we are going to have tough times, but we have to work through those times. And I feel the structure we have as a country that allows us to do that.
I sure hope so. I do feel like the news tends to focus on
The negative.
the negative, but also in the business news, the biggest companies, and there's a lot of people that get left out along the way.
Yes,
You keep hearing about half of our country doesn't have $400 in an emergency or whatever. I mean, those are the people that I think that are not getting enough of a voice in what's going on in terms of innovation, and how do we help the whole country. That's my concern. Anyhow. But I think you're right. Life is a journey, and there's going to be innovation's a journey, and there's going to be good years and bad years. There was the crisis and the Great Depression, and of course, and more recently, the financial crisis in 2008. And who knows what's going to come next, right?
I mean, even if you look at the Civil War, and
right.
I mean, those times which you didn't have the news and all the things that go on today to keep people informed and provide some direction of whatever that direction is. I find the country has persevered some really, really deep times.
The Civil War was a very dark time, so that's a very good point. Well, Bruce, I really appreciate you coming to the HP Garage and letting us come here too, and talking about its role in the history of innovation. And thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing the series, because I mean, the history that you will paint over this series will be quite interesting.